Hey there, Cosmic Warriors, and welcome back to another video. And if you are new here, my name is Hannah. I'm a Western Practical Astrologer. So today we are going to be talking all about this Neptune in Pisces transit. So I want to mention firstly that there are similar videos all about Pluto in Aquarius and Pluto in Capricorn on the channel. So I will link those videos below. Basically, the layout, the structure of this series is to look at these longer transits as stories. So Neptune then has been in Pisces, its home sign, since 2011 and will be there until 2026. Now, yes, Neptune will enter Aries on the 30th of March of 2025 for a few months, but it will dip back in to Pisces and officially move out of Pisces in 2026. Okay, so what I also want to mention is before we dive in, if you would like to book a reading with me, you can head on over to my website, hannahselsewhere.com. And if you want to learn more about astrology, then go to my podcast. It's the Cosmic Check-In podcast. We're currently on season 2 and we have went through the houses. We are now on the 8th house. So yes, a lot of information available about astrology over at the Cosmic Check-In podcast. And if you would like to learn how to read your birth chart simply, you can always pick up a copy of the astrology cheat sheets I created. They are a bestseller. Right, let's get into this. Let's do this. And we're just going to take a moment, maybe look at this as a bit of an intro. I haven't decided yet if we're going to split this into 2 videos or not, but we'll see. But we're going to take a while to really dive into what Neptune in Pisces has brought forward, just some examples. Though, just to look over the dates, Neptune first entered Pisces April 2011 until August 2011. So back then, of course, the collective got a taster of the energy. And then see here that February 2012, Neptune officially entered Pisces, where it has stayed. It has stayed there and will stay there until March of 2025, where it will dip into Aries and then come back into Pisces October 2025. And then from October until January 2026, of course, Neptune will be in Pisces still. And then from January 2026, that's it. Goodbye. Goodbye, Neptune and Pisces. Neptune and Aries, that transit will officially begin. So those are the dates. But what are some themes? Some themes. What we have noticed with Neptune being in Pisces is, for example, spiritual practices resurfacing. We've seen this happening. For example, astrology, tarot, crystal usage, crystal healing, studying the chakras, law of attraction, manifestation. However, as these subjects have grown in popularity, whilst Neptune has been in Pisces, what has also happened is more confusion. Neptune, you see, is a planet that serves as a symbol of spirituality, and that's great. However, it can also serve as a symbol tied to deception, lies, and it can look at this fog, this haze, not seeing things for what they are, not seeing things very clearly. And with that, of course, what can happen is manipulation can occur. So we've also seen more confusion. We have seen greater lies and deception. So consider people who use spiritual practices as a way to manipulate, as a way to fulfill their own egos, right? The thing about this is we could look at spiritual practices indicating, okay, what about the ego? How can we maybe be a bit more selfless rather than selfish? But that can get twisted. And we've seen this. We've seen this. Think about con artists, deceivers, people just pretending to be something that they're not. The lack of understanding and the lack of awareness, and many being misguided and many being misled using spiritual practices. This sub generation claims to know the meaning of existence, but we have to think here about with what credentials. With what credentials? Because in today's world, I suppose anybody can just turn on a camera and say, hey, I'm such a spiritual person. Da, 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 da. So these questions have been coming up, and it can be a slippery slope. It can. It can be a slippery slope if we don't consider facts, data, evidence, and science. The thing is that science is also important. The facts and the data is also important. And then what can also occur from this is being unknowingly misguided, but equally unknowingly misguiding other people. So we've seen the rise of psychics, mediums, clairvoyants. But how, and this is just something to consider, how are such things measured? But then again, and this is really my way of trying to get you to think about these themes. But who is to say such people are wrong and they cannot be trusted? Are they genuine people who care? So we do see that, yes, when it comes to spiritual practices and sharing intuitive gifts, for example, there are many genuine people out there who care, who have been practicing, who have been studying, who are able to combine their research with what they're doing, and they're skilled, they're crafted in what they do. They're recognized in what they do. But it's still a question of here, are the genuine people being given a bad name due to the con artists, due to the ones who do manipulate and use spiritual practices as a way to gain power and recognition? So, following on from this, we've also noticed the rise of narcissism, gaslighting, victimization, undiagnosed mental illnesses as well, projection as well has really occurred. Therapy has also been discussed more openly. However, the thing about this is we've also noticed more excuses for bad behavior. It's sort of like, oh, well, I have this, so I can do this. Oh, it's not me, it's my da 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 da. Insert whatever label, whatever title you want to have. We've noticed this. So what happens then is martyrdom, victimhood. Oh, feel sorry for me, feel sorry for me. Okay. Then we've also noticed the dissolving of the ego by spiritual gurus. Many spiritual gurus saying, oh, you need to dissolve the ego. Oh, you need to transcend this. You need to transcend that. Da, 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 da. Interesting. Even using the likes of law of attraction and manifestation in ways where it is just about filling their own pockets. So I'm trying to be clear when I say this, that when it comes to these practices that I bring up, right, there are genuine people who care. There are people who have been practicing, studying, they know their stuff, they care about service and supporting other people. But there are still other people out there who cannot be trusted. So who are we to believe? These are the themes of Neptune and Pisces, is what I'm trying to get at. Who can be trusted? But equally, This transit has ushered in support, healing, health professionals. So, as I say, these are just a few examples that I wanted to draw from, and I wanted to get you to think. But also, I want to mention that Saturn, okay, Saturn, the planet of time, the planet of karma and maturity, Saturn has been in Pisces since March of 2023. So, Saturn coming into this sign, it's been very interesting because what I think Saturn has ushered in is a lot of truth, a lot of honesty, establishing healthy boundaries, people being able to see through the fog, to see things a bit more clearly, to not be as sabotaged or as deceived. So, healthy boundaries, but also emotional maturity. And emotional maturity does require taking accountability, taking responsibility for ourselves. So instead of continuously being in this victimhood, it's everybody else's fault, etc., being able to look within ourselves. And it's that emotional honesty. But equally, this is about showing healthy skepticism, being skeptical, being cautious when we can tied to these spiritual practices. We've also been able to get a grasp on what is going on. Plus, I think that, and I've mentioned this in a previous video before, I think it was the Pluto and Aquarius video where I went through the Saturn signs and the Uranus signs and the Neptune signs during the transit. But we've noticed the rise of loneliness, right? This loneliness epidemic, right? Pisces is a sign of solitude, but it's also a sign of isolation. And I especially think that this has soared since the lockdowns, right? Think about how Saturn was in Aquarius and then Saturn came into Pisces, and we've seen this loneliness epidemic. We see many YouTube videos of people saying, I have no friends, I'm not in a relationship, I don't see the point in being in a relationship. Okay. So we see the suffering. We see these hard lessons to do with loneliness. We see these hard lessons to do with suffering or pain. Suffering when we unknowingly take responsibility for other people's emotions too. We unknowingly take responsibility for other people's emotions. So maybe this is something to consider. It's how much we take on from other people. And we have seen this. We have seen this time and time again over the past few years. Many people saying, no, I need to have healthy boundaries. I need to separate myself a little bit from my parents who are unhealthy, from my siblings who are unhealthy. I need space for me. And great, right? That I feel is a strength. I think that it's important to recognize our emotional security, our emotional needs in this way. Okay. And also, like I was trying to say earlier, just seeing the reality, seeing through distortions. I think Saturn has ushered this in. But we still cannot deny, I do think we can't deny that with Saturn coming into Pisces, there's still this feeling of confinement. And what I'm getting from this is drowning, suffocating, feeling just really stuck. Okay. We have also recognized here that many people do feel stuck. Many people feel lost. Many people feel like, what is the point? I just want to give up. And honestly, I think when we combine this with the bigger picture, when we consider how Uranus is in Taurus, right? There's the sextile between Neptune and Uranus, Uranus being this other sub-generational planet. We've noticed the cost of living. We've noticed just the housing prices soaring. We've noticed security struggles, security battles for people. We've noticed the lack of job consistency, the instability when it comes to jobs, when it comes to finances and money, right? We've noticed also, and maybe a part of this is being ushered in by Pluto in Aquarius, right? Again, another generational planet, the main generational planet, but Pluto in Aquarius ushering in these themes to do with technology. And that's a big fear for people, because think about how already we're noticing, due to the rise of technology, many people's jobs are being X'd out. No, don't need you anymore. Yeah. So what are those people supposed to do about their livelihoods? So again, we bring it back to Saturn and Pisces. And yeah, a lot of people are feeling just like hopeless. This is it. Saturn and Pisces is sort of saying, I feel hopeless. I feel directionless. Almost like you're lost at sea. You're lost at sea. Where do I go? There's no direction. There's no light. Where's the lighthouse? Where is that lighthouse? You consider that in terms of Neptune, right? Neptune being in Pisces, we see the greater distortions and the challenges, the fog that happens. So whilst sure, there is a side to Saturn and Pisces blended in with Neptune a little bit, where it says, okay, it's time to face the reality of the situation. It's time to see through these distortions. But we still can't deny that when we consider people's experiences, their challenges, their struggles are very, very real for them. And it's a bit more complex. Now, what I further want to mention is I want to talk about this 29th degree, because what's going to happen is Neptune is going to reach, well, let me just double check. If I'm pretty sure Neptune has already reached the 29th degree. I'm pretty sure it has. No, okay. Neptune has not quite reached the 29th degree, but it will. It will. It'll reach the 29th degree around February, March time. More so March, I think, 2025. Why is this important? Because before Neptune enters Aries on the 30th of March, just for a couple of months, right? Neptune will be at that 29th degree. And the 29th degree is an anaretic degree. It's a critical degree. What does this mean? It's a degree of revision. It's a degree of assessment. It's a degree of evaluation. So as we really start to build up to Neptune's entrance into Aries, March 2025, right? Can you maybe, and maybe this is just some practical use here for you, but can you maybe take some time to honestly evaluate where you've been, what's happened for you over the past 13 years or so? This recap of Neptune and Pisces. Look back, what have you learned? And you know what it is, folks? This is perhaps a great segue. It's a great segue as we go through the signs, because the whole point of this video is to read Neptune in Pisces as a bit of a story to take you back. I'm going to take you back and I'm going to build on things. And I also want to mention that the themes that I just talked about, those are more collective themes. This is not to suggest that everybody is doing this or acting like this, behaving in this way. The themes I mentioned there are more based on observations I've noticed from my own research, things happening online, people I talk to, etc. Okay, so what we're going to do now is move on to your horoscopes. This video is for Libra through to Pisces. And then, of course, for those of you so looking at Aries through to Virgo, I will link that video down below. Thank you so much. Right, yes. Let's then start off by exploring Libra. So Libra, let's explore this Neptune in Pisces transit through your 6th house. And what I want to start off by saying, Libra, is that the dates that you see before you, in front of you, remember, just overlaps due to retrogrades. These are just more estimations. And also, I do understand that each person is going to be on their own journey. We think about different ages, things like that. Okay, so what has this Neptune in Pisces transit ushered in for you? I think, Libra, we are noticing here quite big shifts to do with your daily habits and routines. In one way, we can look at this as things being a bit foggy or unclear, a bit undefined. But in another way, we could look at this as a lot of sacrifices or having to surrender to the unknown in some way, shape, or form. We notice the dissolving of certain routines and schedules, and perhaps having to surrender to a situation when it comes to work. So, for instance, maybe for many of you Libras, you have went a complete you've led a completely different path basically when it comes to work. Something that you thought would continue on and be a thing changed because matters dissolved or you were guided along a different path. What comes to my mind is you being within the workforce, but then taking time away from the workforce, maybe because of health, illness, recovery, rehab, mental health difficulties, having a family, so maternity leave, parental leave. There's just something here about certain schedules and routines changing and you having to redefine in some way your routines and habits as well. I'm even thinking to myself about you changing your habits for the better or recognizing that certain habits have been overly idealistic. Maybe you've had to face the reality of your habits. So, for instance, thinking about unrealistic expectations. And because of that, especially with Saturn since March 2023, because of that, you've perhaps had to look closely at how you can redefine things, how you can reshape things, remold things, restructure things, right? With Saturn involved. And perhaps a part of it too is about, okay, well, what is realistic here? What is practical? And I'm also going to suggest that I'm thinking to myself, Libra, your everyday routines and habits and rituals have really involved something quite spiritual. Maybe you've gotten into meditation or you've journaled. Perhaps there's a lot of spiritual exploration, emotional exploration. Perhaps you have many dreams and fantasies tied to work. Could even be that for many of you Libras, you have landed your dream job, for instance, over this or during throughout this transit. So this fantasy, this dream becoming a bit of a reality. And we also see this as you recognizing that you need some maybe space away, right? Some time away from the daily grind, the busyness of life, rushing about, maybe for your own wellness, your own well being. And that also makes me think about health to an extent. It does. I think Neptune transit the 6th can be quite a tricky one when it comes to health. And again, I think a part of this could be you needing to step away from the everyday, from the mundane, from work, the workload, the heavy workload, maybe because your health has required that. Could also be, hey, the health of a pet, the health of other people within your home, right? That this kind of stuff also coming through, I think. So health, I think, has also been a big focus, a big priority. Maybe even certain sacrifices have been made. Certain sacrifices have been made in the name of health, in the name of service, in the name of work. And then I'm also thinking to myself about the stress level stuff, maybe feeling overwhelmed. This is what we get with Neptune here is the emotional overwhelm. But then equally, it could be you helping people with their own emotional overwhelm, helping people through their own stress. So we could also look at this as you taking some time to explore how you can help, how you can be of service to other people. Maybe even art, beauty, creativity, dance, music, these things have been a part of your everyday routines, right? Your everyday routines have really involved these creative areas, these spiritual areas too, right? Drawing from the spiritual as a way to maybe get through the day, as a way to cope, and maybe also services tied to spirituality, services tied to health. Okay, so now we've really focused on Neptune through your sixth house since 2011. We're now going to go through these dates. April until June of 2011, Jupiter was in your seventh. So back then, I see this as you perhaps taking the lead in some way, shape, or form when it came to your relationships and your partnerships. Expansion and growth could have happened, whether this be a marriage, whether this be a proposal, but also equally a business partnership, a collaboration, or this could have also involved a breakup or a separation, a divorce. Because the seventh house is about endings and beginnings of relationships there, but also endings. But within itself there, we notice some leadership tied to Aries, independence. June 2011 until 2012, Jupiter was in your eighth. This part of the transit could have really invited you to consider, okay, joint financial planning. How are we spending our resources? How are we spending our money as a couple? That's one example. But it could also have been you wanting to pay off your debts, wanting to pay off a loan, or maybe saving for a mortgage, for a house, something like that. But it was basically strongly about finances, managing perhaps other people's finances, but we see the new opportunities to do with money there, perhaps in a more combining way. Then June 2012 until 2013, Jupiter was in your ninth. I see this as a lot of traveling, many travel opportunities and experiences. Perhaps also we can look at this as you entering into a new higher educational program. It could have been a course, could have been a degree. Perhaps this was also about advanced training. So training within a certain field, within a certain sector. Education was just a big focus with Jupiter in your ninth. Maybe also specifically educating yourself for work purposes. Consider how Jupiter was making a square to the sixth house there. Just educating yourself. But there could have been some challenges, of course, with that square influence. Challenges tied to your routines and your everyday habits. Moving on to June 2013 until July 2014. Well, Libra, maybe this is when your career, your profession really started to take off. For instance, this could have been you getting that role that you really wanted, achieving that position. Or this could have been some of you Libras actually deciding to change things about your professional lives. Maybe you wanted to stay at home. Maybe you had a family. Maybe it's that you redefined what family and purpose meant to you back then in some way, shape, or form. But we do see the growth, we do see the expansion there, especially with that trine to the sixth house. So yeah, that more harmonious energy flow between the sixth and the 10th. We do see the work stuff, the career stuff, the success stuff truly take off. Moving on, July 2014 until August 2015, Jupiter was in your 11th. So I think with this one, there could have been some disagreements, perhaps, challenges, perhaps, tied to friendships, tied to teams and groups. Maybe a part of your own ego got involved, or it's that it was also equally the ego of other people. But there was still something there about dignity and self-respect, and perhaps at the same time, growing in confidence within friendship groups, right? Friendship dynamics, group dynamics. Maybe also a part of that involved you wanting to broaden your horizons when it came to organizations, companies, just exploring your options in some way, shape, or form, maybe wanting to be within a leadership position, for instance. Then August 2015 until September 2016, Jupiter was in your 12th. Well, that was certainly a time period, Libra, for you to go within, for you to really assess your priorities behind the scenes, for you to think about your health, for you to think about your day-to-day stuff, to think about, okay, well, my schedules and routines, how are things effective there? How am I managing those things? What would I like to change? Keeping in mind that Neptune was opposing Jupiter at that time, so that 6th house, 12th house activation, a lot of stuff there to do with just the daily, day-to-day things. Errands, chores, habits, changing habits, maybe even having to go over unhealthy habits, unhealthy patterns. September 2016 until October 2017, what do we see? Jupiter entering into your sign, Libra, in your first house. So we see this as this new chapter. A new chapter to do with, could have been work, it could have been your services, a new chapter to do with relationships and partnerships. Maybe this involved reconnecting with an old friend, or this could have been reconnecting with a partner, or just taking things to another level when it came to relationships. Maybe even marriage was a part of this, or wanting to establish just something new, something that changed your identity back then. Again, this stuff could have been tied in with collaborations and business partnerships. Perhaps even a part of it too was still an element of you doing things solo with the first house involved. October 2017 until November 2018, Jupiter was in your second. So whenever I think of this combination, Neptune in the sixth and Jupiter in the second, that harmonious energy flow indicating profound change, actually, profound change and opportunities for growth when it came to finances, investments, and especially combining resources, perhaps with a significant other, with your partner, with your spouse. Also, the combining of resources when it came to bins, but whatever the case may be, those new opportunities to do with money. Paying off debt perhaps was a big theme. Then, November 2018 until December 2019, Jupiter was in your third house. We see this as more opportunities for travel, experiences, new experiences. Maybe also your morals changed, or your worldviews changed in some way, your philosophies changed. Maybe this was about relocating or changing your environment, switching up your environment, being open to the new, doing so with enthusiasm. December 2019 until 2020, Jupiter was in Capricorn in your fourth. So what we see here is really these changes, well, to do with family, to do with home, taking on more responsibilities at home, plans to move home, having long-term goals tied to family, seeing what structures needed to be set when it came to your home, when it came to your living situation, possibly moving out of your family home. But anyway, greater responsibility is what I'm getting from that. December 2020 until 2021, of course, there's some overlaps here, but Jupiter went into Aquarius in your fifth. So there was that Aquarius influence with Jupiter there in the fifth, a part of this in the sixth, but anyway, with the Pisces part of it. But anyway, let's focus on this. Jupiter in the fifth could have pointed towards expansion to do with creativity, having a child, having more children, aspirations to have children, or aspirations to not, well, just deciding not to have children is a better way to put that. Deciding you don't want to have children. But whatever the case may be, discussions surrounding children, but also discussions surrounding creativity, time off, things like that. Your creative projects could have been really brought into focus, new opportunities there. Then we fast forward to April 2022. Jupiter is in your 6th, and what happened back then was Jupiter and Neptune conjunct and kickstarted this new 12-year cycle within your 6th house. What could this have indicated? Major changes, major new chapters to do with your health, your routines, your everyday, your productivity levels, your stress levels, and all of the practical stuff. So we could look at this as a sacrifice that was made, something that you surrender to, giving up control. We could look at this as new spiritual concepts, new spiritual insights. We could look at this as healing. We could also explore this through a lens of visions and dreams, maybe guiding you along a different path. Moving on, December 2022 until May 2023, here we go. Jupiter is back in the 7th for this whole new cycle. So what I'm getting from this is when it came to how you approached relationships back then, right? So with Jupiter in Aries in your 7th, maybe how you started to approach them really massively changed based on the spiritual insights that you explored when it came to your health, when it came to your priorities, your everyday. And maybe as well, we could look at this as you changing your focus a bit, putting yourself first in some way when it came to business and collaborations. Or we could look at this as some interesting new opportunities and developments for you and your significant other, new goals, for example, together. May 2023 until 2024, Jupiter back into the 8th. So more plans, more changes there, more developments there to do with joint financial planning, to do with paying off debts, combining resources, managing your money as a team, as a couple. But also equally, we can look at this as perhaps more exploration tied to your unconscious, tied to hidden knowledge, hidden truth, being quite curious, quite fascinated in maybe taboo-like subjects or the occult, for instance. Moving on to May 2024 until March 2025. And of course, hey, do you know what? Here we are. Here we are. We arrive at today, and Jupiter is back in the 9th. So again, we see these changes. We see the variety, I suppose, to do with the likes of travel, higher education, to do with advanced training, your worldviews, but maybe the way you're seeing things has changed massively, different to how it was when Jupiter was in Gemini from June 2012 until 2013 there. Because I think what's important to keep in mind is the perspective shift that really kickstarted with that conjunction, April 2022. So what am I saying here? I'm thinking to myself that your priorities or your desires and aspirations tied to the likes of higher education or advanced training, those things have changed and shifted based on all of the work stuff, the schedule stuff that you really took a closer look at April of 2022. Maybe you're wanting to widen your view, or you're wanting to reach different people, different audiences. Maybe it's about broadcasting or publishing. Maybe it's somewhat about community and togetherness, networking, or maybe it's simply about just having a different perspective, a different view about certain qualifications. And then, of course, Jupiter will enter your 10th house come June of 2025. And I'm just focusing on Neptune in Pisces mixed with Jupiter here when we look at those dates. But basically, Jupiter in the 10th and just closing this transit. Well, exciting new developments, I think, when it comes to work, status, your reputation. But I can't help but think that such new plans, such new developments are going to be more so based on the spiritual insights that poured through related to your health, related to your daily routines and habits. whenever, of course, Jupiter and Neptune conjunct in your sixth a couple of years ago. Thank you so much, Libra. And now on to Scorpio. Okay, Scorpio. Let's talk about this Neptune in Pisces transit for you since 2011. Before we do get into this, I just want to mention that the dates you see before you are more estimations. Just remember retrogrades. Look into the dates for yourself for more specifics. And I do acknowledge that we are all at different stages of our lives, different ages, etc. Right. What has been ushered in for you since 2011 as Neptune has made its way through your fifth house Libra, Scorpio, my apologies, Scorpio, is that, a lot has been unfolding and changing to do with your creativity, to do with art. And many of you have been finding your groove. You've been in the flow creatively. So much passion there, so much beauty there, fascination. You have been almost taken to different worlds, different dimensions through your creativity. I'm thinking to myself about fantasy related creativity, right? Figurines, painting, movies, gaming, some forms of escapism. I think also about, in some way, the past could be a part of this. Diving into the past and exploring artists that you love, that you respect. Overall, I just think that, yes, creativity and art have been massive within your life over these years. Perhaps even another way, though, to look at this is by considering children. Maybe a dream of yours was to have a child, and during this transit, you have had a child. You've had a child, you've had many children, quite possibly. You may even dream right now of having another child. That could be on your mind. There could also be some ideals to do with romance and love, very connected in with spiritual principles, spiritual values when it comes to romance and love. Perhaps getting lost in a person, so to speak, and to be cautious of that, I suppose, because yes, Neptune can also suggest lack of boundaries within love here. It can also suggest you getting caught up in a fantasy, being overly idealistic, possessing wishful thinking, maybe in a subconscious way expecting certain lovers or partners to be perfect. Could also be some forms of disappointment here, being massively disappointed whenever a lover does not live up to your unrealistic expectations. Could also be holding on to faith. You're hoping for something to change, but maybe it doesn't change. Could also be these themes then in a similar fashion to the Virgos, where you've been wearing rose-colored glasses within romantic relationships. But hey, we also equally can explore this in a more positive view and consider compassion and empathy and forgiveness, tenderness, softness within romance and love. We could also look at this even through your self-expression. Your self-expression coming across as quite soothing and graceful and beautiful and dreamy, maybe daring other people to dream. And we could also explore this in terms of escapism within your romantic relationships. Going away for the weekend with your partner or taking a trip, just some, of course, healthy forms of escapism. But naturally, this could also be unhealthy forms of escapism. This could also be where you project onto lovers with those expectations, those unrealistic expectations. Plus, I think that a part of this involves, in some ways, dissolving the ego. And I don't mean that in a very literal and not entirely, basically. I don't mean it in a literal sense. I don't mean it entirely. I just mean selflessness. I mean being patient, a bit more patient, a bit more, uh, a bit more tender, a bit more tender romantically. But hey, we could equally look at this as you being a bit more tender with yourself, thinking about the inner child, exploring the inner child, connecting with your inner child in this way, inviting greater play, greater fun. Maybe escapism involves fun and play. Hey, maybe it's that having a child is the very thing that has awakened within you in some way this inner child, or the part of you that, well, maybe felt abandoned or neglected or unseen. So there could be a lot coming up to the surface. Some, of course, some things that are really very healing and beautiful and insightful, but other things that are just very dark, and the suffering is there. There's pain and there's sorrow and misery. But overall, I am going to say this, that Neptune in the fifth has been amazing for you creatively. I'm thinking about art, beauty, romance, dance, music, poetry, social media, glamour, the glamour. Also, hidden talents, exploring your hidden talents, your hidden gifts, movies, novels, stories, your imagination, archetypes, mythology, symbolism, seeing the symbols everywhere, Scorpio. Okay, so now we have explored this Neptune in the fifth. Let's go through these dates. April until June of 2011, Jupiter was in your sixth. So, kickstarting this transit, Scorpio, there were certain plans, there were certain aims, goals that you had, I think, related to work, related to service, your day to day, all that stuff. And I think a part of it involved embracing something new, or leadership, or leading the way, leading a new path. And also, health could have been a big focus for you, having to address your health and take action, take effective action. June 2011 until 2012, Jupiter was in your seventh. So, one way to look at this is that back then you got into a relationship, or it's that you ended a relationship. Maybe also, when we blend in a little bit, Neptune making a sextile to Jupiter, there were some, um I would say there were some boundaries that needed to be looked at and addressed. Maybe having to look at ideals, or idealizing love, the fantasies, the romanticism stuff to do with love, possibly. But hey, I think Jupiter in the seventh overall could be growth and expansion related to relationships, marriage, commitments, business partners, maybe for a financial reason. June 2012 until 2013, Jupiter was in your eighth. So, this part of the transit, I actually do think this was a bit more tricky, a bit more slippery, a bit more challenging, especially because Jupiter was making a square to Neptune. Now, one way to look at this is that intimate relationships, intimate partners brought up a lot from within you. It's almost like they challenged you mentally. Could have been quite exhausting, honestly. But also, another way to look at this is that you addressed the good, the bad, and the ugly, that kind of thing to do with the eighth house. You were able to explore your unconscious, the unknown, and that could have given you a different perspective about relationships, about commitment, about sharing, for instance. Moving it away, though, a little bit from relationships, I mean, this could have been also things that were looked at and addressed within yourself, tied to your own ways of communicating, maybe tied to siblings, tied to writing, speaking. June 2013 until July 2014, Jupiter was in your ninth. Now, that part of the transit could have invited some new opportunities to do with travel, right? Could have been traveling with a significant other, with a lover. So going abroad, going to a different country, could have also been where you embraced a new teaching, a new worldview, or it's that your worldview's changed in some way, shape, or form. Your philosophies changed, your perspectives changed, maybe because of a romantic partner situation or because of a child situation. When we think about the fifth making a trine to the ninth. Moving on then to July 2014 until August 2015, Jupiter in the 10th. This part of the transit, I would say, could have brought challenges to do with recognition, to do with status, success, and reputation. Perhaps you learned back then very quickly what you didn't want from a career, what you didn't want from long term success. But it was also a good way for you to explore your own confidence and your own self assurance, your own pride, perhaps, when it came to um, positions and roles that you would take on, especially related to management, for example, because of Leo involved. Moving on to August 2015 until September 2016, Jupiter then was in your 11th. And so this part of the transit, I think, well, we did see for you some changes in view to do with friendships, being quite specific, being quite perhaps nitpicky to some degree, but also using your critical thinking skills to consider, okay, what's going on within this friendship? What is it that I don't appreciate about this? What do I not like about this? But equally, what is going right? What are some ways that we can improve upon things slightly? And it's interesting because Jupiter did oppose Neptune in your fifth at that time. And so we do see the possibilities of inner turmoil, inner conflict in some way to do with relating, to do with friendships and groups and teams. Moving on then, excuse me, to September 2016 until October 2017, Jupiter was in your 12th. Now, this part of the transit, I think, invited you to really just think about what you wanted, to think about what you wanted from relationships. It could be that there were some hidden things that came up, there were hidden truths within yourself that you had to address. Maybe you had to draw from your own fears or assess your own fears, what was maybe holding you back, or maybe some themes to do with relationships that were really getting to you emotionally, and you just needed that time to process it, Scorpio, quietly, on your own, behind the scenes. Maybe you even drew from art as a way to cope, or just you maybe even escaped a little bit. Could have been through music or media. Okay, so October 2017 until November 2018, what do we see? Jupiter in your sign, Scorpio, right? In your first house. Really looking at new chapters, new beginnings to do with your life path, to do with intimacy, to do with bonding. It's almost like you reinvented yourself, right? You reinvented yourself with relation to trust and commitment. You took that time, right? You took that time whilst Jupiter was in Libra, and you really went over, well, I can see this trait, I can see this behavior within me, but I can also see how this trait or behavior is happening within other people. And I want this, I don't want this, right? So this was your rebirth in many ways, your rebirth, very much a rebirth tied to love and romance, tied to creativity and children as well. Maybe you even decided back then, whilst Jupiter was in your first house, do you know what? I really, really want to have a child. That's just one example. Okay, November 2018 until December 2019, Jupiter in your second Scorpio. So, hey, this part of the transit was really you taking things on board financially, getting your money in order, right? You maybe even taking on a new position at work. There could have been changes to do with your income. There could have been some changes to do with your beliefs and your worldviews related to finances. And with the square, right, the second house to the fifth house, with that square, maybe there was some challenge. There was a potential challenge to do with finances, maybe having to address any overspending, for instance, cleaning up your emotional or your financial health. December 2019 until 2020, well, we see here, Scorpio, that Jupiter was in your third. Well, you really matured, didn't you, when it came to communication? You learned pretty quickly. Okay, right. I need to be serious. I need to take this seriously when it comes to communicating my point, my message. Maybe you even embrace some sort of new study. And since then, you've sort of, in a way, been gradually building on that and really improving upon your skills. You've been quite you've worked on your craft, basically. You've been planning things out. Maybe this stuff also involves greater maturity with siblings, with classmates, with old childhood friends, things like that. Just, yeah, coming up, maturing. Moving on. Then we see around December 2020 until 2021. So there's just some overlaps there, of course, but Jupiter being in Aquarius in your fourth, well, you really then started to set your eyes on the prize when it came to home and family. So we can look at this as you possibly relocating, you moving out of out of your family home, out of a home that you had with or you shared with your partner, or it's moving the entire family or getting a house. Just home and family was a big focus, new opportunities there. Naturally, with that being said, this could have been in a positive way or in a more challenging way. But you see, we come to Jupiter being in your fifth in Pisces. And April 2022, we saw a new 12-year cycle begin within your fifth house, Scorpio. So Jupiter and Neptune conjunct in Pisces, ushering in this new 12-year cycle to do with art, creativity, love. We see spiritual insights. We see surrendering to the unknown. We see here your fascination and your desires and your fantasies to do with your creativity, your art. And we also see these changes to do with children. Maybe dreams, again, we go back to dreams of having children, for instance. So a new cycle started. New chapters began back then. And of course, as Jupiter enters into the sixth, once again, a new cycle begins through the signs. So December 2022 until May 2023, Jupiter back into the sixth. And so we could look at this as you taking on a different leadership position, work reasons, of course. We can look at this as you taking the lead in a different way when it came to routines and everyday stuff, when it came to your habits. Again, we can look at this as you doing so based on the realizations, the spiritual awakenings that happened in some way, shape, or form to do with creativity, self expression, individuality, love. May 2023 until 2024, Jupiter is back in the seventh. And so we could look at this as furthering your commitment, furthering your bond with the significant other. We could look at this as, hey, literally getting married. We can look at this as these intentions, these plans in place to get married, to ask someone to marry you or to get engaged. But we could also look at this as some financial shifts and changes within the relationship itself, and financial shifts and changes and opportunities to do with business partnerships. Also, keep in mind with the seventh house, it can be the ending of a relationship too. The ending of a business relationship, the ending of a more of a romantic, committed relationship. Right, we arrive at today. We're here today, and Jupiter is in your eighth. And what we see here is that there's something happening with your partner's money. Maybe it is that your partner is going to come into some more money, but there's actually limitations and there's blockages happening right now. Maybe it's that you have greater intentions to combine, to share in a resource way, right? So thinking about resources and finances, combining them together, maybe as a way to save for something as a couple. We could also look at this as new opportunities and insights, just really to do with your psychology, to do with your mind. Taking a closer look, gaining a deeper perspective, the mind transforming. But I do just want to mention quickly that right now in the sky, of course, Saturn is making a bit of a square there to Jupiter. And we're seeing the mental blocks, we're seeing the relationship blocks, but things are going to turn. Things are going to turn. Even if it is that your partner is maybe struggling with money or finances at the minute, things are going to change as the score eases with time. Still, moving on then to Jupiter entering your ninth, June of 2025. Travel is on the horizon, Scorpio. May not feel like it, perhaps for some of you, but it is. Travel is on the horizon. Relocating is possibly likely here. Deciding you want to have a family is likely going to come up. Or your worldviews, your beliefs tied to family, your morals tied to family in some way changing too. All right. Thank you so much, Scorpio. And now on to Sagittarius. Right. Sagittarius, let's talk about Neptune in Pisces for you. I want to start off by saying that the dates you see before you are more estimations. Do keep in mind retrogrades. Just look into retrogrades, more of the details for yourself. And also, I do understand that we're all at different stages of our lives as I explore each of these signs. Okay, what has Neptune in Pisces since 2011 really ushered in for you, Sagittarius? Well, what we see is that with Neptune being in your fourth house, we're noticing certain patterns and cycles dissolving tied to family and home. What I'm seeing here is you perhaps breaking certain family cycles and habits, emotional habits. But equally, we can look at this as you being caught up in the overwhelm of emotional family cycles and habits, and you having to set pretty firm boundaries there. And the thing about this, of course, Sagittarius, is Saturn has been supporting you in many ways, right? Because Saturn has been in your fourth house since March of 2023. So we could look at this as you being quite firm about healthy boundaries, knowing what is yours, knowing what is others. Seeing that it's not your responsibility to get tangled up in everybody else's emotional drama, emotional chaos, really. And that within itself has perhaps been quite eye-opening and healthy for you, Sagittarius. Plus, we could look at this as you having dreams, possessing dreams of living somewhere, relocating to somewhere, having a certain home, a certain home, and maybe certain dreams there, specific dreams there, have actually came true for you. You've gotten the house, you've relocated, you're now living with a certain someone. You are with your family in a way that feels peaceful, greater inner peace. Having said that, though, we also want to keep in mind the disillusionment stuff, the fog stuff to do with Neptune, the being overly idealistic, wishful thinking, getting caught up in a fantasy, in a dream, and maybe painting this picture perfect life onto family, or striving to have what feels like this perfect world, but then being massively disappointed whenever things do not add up. I think a part of this is recognizing the unrealistic expectations that you have when it comes to family as well. Another way to look at this, though, is, well, you diving into your depths, you exploring your emotions, trying to make sense of your emotional reactions, your emotional needs and attachments and habits, which has been really eye-opening too. And from you maybe diving into the past, exploring the unknown, you've been able to recognize certain parts of yourself that you can surrender to or integrate or learn from. Very healing. Very healing. Perhaps too, a part of this is being open to the unknown, open to the possibilities, to what could be family-wise, home-wise, living situation-wise. And hey, for some of you Sagittarians, a part of this has involved looking after sick family members, having to really be there to support your lover, your partner, your spouse, your children. And I'm even going to say here, your spiritual practices within the home. Using the home as a form of escapism, perhaps, or escaping within the home. Hidden talents and gifts coming through as well when you're at home. Maybe just preferring to watch movies and read or write, be creative within the home. These things come to mind. Perhaps even too, a part of it is having to engage in these practices in a way because it's very healing and therapeutic. So tying in with your emotional needs. Right, so now we have dived into this 4th house area. Let's now go through each of these dates. Jupiter then was in the 5th house at the beginning of this Neptune in Pisces transit. As I'm going through this, I just want you to remember, Sagittarius, that Jupiter is your ruler. So Jupiter really does influence you on a very personal, self-focused level. Right, so Jupiter was in the 5th in Aries from April until June of 2011. And so beginning the transit, we could have seen you getting into, could have been a possible new relationship. Maybe it was more about fun, having flings, casual dating. Maybe a part of it was about just being childlike, being playful, being adventurous, being a bit spontaneous, a bit reckless, all that stuff that you engaged in. June of 2011 until 2012, Jupiter was in your 6th. Oh, and hey, just, you know what? Children could have been a focus there too with Jupiter in the 5th. I just want to add. Children could have been a focus. Yes, so Jupiter then going into the 6th, June 2011 until 2012 could have really invited greater growth and opportunity and expansion tied to your workload, your daily practices, your everyday, your routines, your habits. Maybe your health was a big focus, was a big priority back then, especially when we consider the family stuff, the emotional stuff that came through there with family, or having to maybe look after a certain family member was a thing back then. Or we could look at this as you gaining gaining more finances, or focusing on finances, focusing on your wealth at work, maybe as a way to save for the future. June 2012 until 2013, Jupiter was in the 7th. We could look at this as you possibly getting married back then, right? The beginning of a marriage, the beginning of a relationship there. Committed relationships also could be involved with that. But we could also look at this as you entering into some kind of collaboration or business partnership, which involved education, communication, marketing, or research. Or it's that you took things to the next level when it came to your own education. You just You really wanted to learn more from other people, about other people. You wanted to maybe work more closely with clients and customers. New opportunities happened back then. June 2013 until July 2014, Jupiter was in your eighth. Right. This part of the transit, I think, could have been a bit more emotionally draining. Maybe loss was a part of this, grief was a part of this. Transformation tied to family was also coming up, maybe having to separate a little bit or having to consider your emotional needs, or it's that you got caught up in the emotional needs of other people, of family stuff. Maybe family stress was just quite prominent in your life. Or, of course, we could look at this as new opportunities for growth and expansion to do with paying off debts or joint financial planning for family purposes. July 2014 until August 2015, Jupiter was then in the ninth for you, Sagittarius. And hey, you know what? That could have involved you setting out on this mission, so to speak, to want to travel, to broaden your horizons, to let it all hang out, to just let your hair down, to have fun. But we also could have noticed some potential challenges, maybe because of morality, maybe because of your worldviews, maybe feeling a little bit directionless in some way, shape, or form, not knowing completely what you wanted with your life, but the questions were there. The questions were there. Okay. August 2015 until September 2016, Jupiter in the 10th. Many of you could have started a new public position. Many of you could have went on a new career path, or you got a promotion within your current role, your current profession. Could have also been where you felt this calling, a calling to be of service, a calling to help, a calling to make a change within your professional lives. And with Jupiter making that opposition to Neptune with the 4th and the 10th, this could have involved a great deal of discussion amongst family members, or it's that a part of you felt slightly guilty. I mean, guilt could have come into it, or a part of it did require having to just see things a bit more clearly. Maybe having to sort of go, do you know what? All the family stuff, I need to be able to focus on my professional life right now and build on that. But then it could also have been where you addressed your ideals when it came to family back then strongly. September 2016 until October 2017, Jupiter was in the 11th. So we could look at this as some type of growth and expansion to do with friendships and teams and communities. But I also kind of see this partly as some drama coming up to the surface, or having to address disagreements and where conflict would come up, and unfairness and injustice. But then I also see this as you embracing a new network, a new friendship circle, right? I see this as you taking things to another level when it came to clubs and communities. Organizations as well, right? Maybe a new company you join, for instance. October 2017 until November 2018, Jupiter goes into your 12th. Right. That was quite massive, I think, for a lot of self-reflection. A lot of self-reflection happened back then for you, Sagittarius. I think it was very eye-opening. I think you got to get in tune with your own weaknesses, perhaps your own, so like hidden parts of you that maybe you couldn't fully connect with before. You connected with them. Maybe also a part of this was about intimacy, trust. Hey, trusting others, committing to other people, that maybe deception about yourself, the lies that you told yourself about certain things, maybe having to address the past when we combine that with Neptune being in the 4th. Very eye-opening, spiritual awakenings happening there, massive realizations to do with your emotions. November 2018 until December 2019. Well, what do we see? Jupiter is back into the 1st, and it's in your sign. Jupiter enters your sign, Sagittarius, kickstarting these new chapters for you. New chapters to do with your life path. I mean, major new chapters. For example, this could have been you having your first child. It could have been you getting married. It could have been you moving house. It could have been you getting a divorce. Just whatever the case, a new job, whatever the case, we see new beginnings, new chapters, but very much about expansion, growth, new opportunities. Your chart ruler being home there, Sagittarius, pretty massive, honestly. Moving on, December 2019 until 2020, we notice then that Jupiter goes into the second. And so there's something here about taking financial matters pretty dang seriously. You, for instance, thinking, right, okay, this is a long-term goal of mine that I have to do with my finances. This is what I want to earn, or this is what I want to gain in some way, shape, or form. This is what we want to build towards. And so you expanding, you growing, doing the work throughout the process could have been related to family stuff when we think about the sextile between the second and the fourth. Okay, so December 2020 to 2021, Jupiter goes into the third. Right, there's some overlaps here, of course, but with Jupiter in Aquarius in the third, we see here possibilities of you maybe desiring to relocate, wanting to change where you live, because it's like, well, this local area, it's not really doing it for me. I want to go into a different neighborhood. That's a possibility. We could also look at this as some form of growth to do with sibling relationships, maybe making a change for the positive or for the better with sibling relationships, wanting to connect, wanting to get closer with a certain sibling, for instance, or a cousin. But then equally, we could also look at this as new opportunities for growth and expansion to do with education, learning, a new subject, wanting to educate yourself within a certain subject that, hey, maybe was tied to, in some way, shape, or form, helping other people, being of service to other people with Aquarius involved. Right, so moving on, December 2021 until 2022, Jupiter then in Pisces, a part of this, yes, in Aries. There's some overlaps here, but what I'm going to say about this is April 2022, we saw Jupiter entering into Pisces, a new 12-year cycle starting between Neptune and Jupiter. So that new 12-year cycle was so much about, when we consider the fourth house, so much about family. Maybe you really did set new intentions back then. It was like, right, I can feel a shift. I can feel a change to do with family and home and what I want there. New dreams, a new vision, new fantasies. But also a big part of this perhaps being tied in with a peaceful sanctuary, feeling at ease, feeling greater peace in your life. Maybe that was a big focus for you. And a lot of emotion came up perhaps back then. And maybe as well adding to your family. But then this is where we get to Jupiter in the fifth and is in Aries. Back into Aries it goes. And so December 2022 until May 2023 with Jupiter in your fifth. Yes, we could look at this as more aspirations to do with children or different aspirations to do with children. We could look at this as aspirations tied to creativity, art. We can look at this as your hobbies and fun and play really being a big focus back then, especially those things being a big area of focus based on those spiritual insights and realizations that came through April 2022. May 2023 until 2024, Jupiter goes into the sixth. And so again, we see more themes to do with work and service, your everyday routines, things like that. And maybe looking at and addressing how you might want to make a change there. And what I'm also getting from this, and you're the first person that I'm bringing this up with, is that Jupiter-Uranus conjunction that actually happened in the sixth in Taurus. There was the Jupiter-Uranus conjunction. So we could see this as you innovating or just making a significant change tied to your routines and everyday habits. Then we arrive to today, right? We're here, we're at this point. And what do we see? Jupiter is in Gemini. Once again, it's opposing you. It's in your seventh. And so we could explore this as, okay, you having certain conversations with your significant other, with your spouse, maybe about the future, maybe about aspirations. Perhaps also it's just about changing your view, changing your perspective because of communication, because of collaboration. Could also be close friends, close relationships, those one-to-one relationships where, yeah, you're learning from them. And that within itself is teaching you something. Naturally, there has been a bit of a square between Saturn in your 4th and Jupiter in your 7th. So there's some family stuff being played out here that maybe you don't want to get involved with either. There could also be some restrictions and limitations tied to family or home. Maybe you're also trying to sort of negotiate a little bit with your significant other. So that stuff could be happening right now. Could also be negotiations about business partnerships too. But things will ease and things will, of course, become a bit more clear. But you see, Jupiter will continue to move, and by June of 2025, Jupiter will be in your 8th. And the dates that you see, it's more just focusing on Neptune in Pisces mixed with Jupiter. But basically, to end Neptune in Pisces in your 4th with Jupiter in your 8th, we're going to see then you experiencing perhaps some kind of growth or expansion to do with shared resources. I mean, this could even be, and I'm going to just be honest about this could be possibilities of loss or grief, right? It could also be possibilities of an inheritance. Another way to look at this, though, could be about transformations of family. So, transformations tied to family stuff. And maybe a part of that is because you let go of a certain habit or you break a certain cycle. More of this, like I was saying with Neptune in the 4th, more of this breaking emotional patterns and cycles. And that within itself could be like a renewal, an emotional renewal, a spiritual renewal. Thank you so much, Sagittarius. And now on to Capricorn. Okay, so moving on to Capricorn. Capricorn, let's explore this Neptune in Pisces transit for you. First of all, I just want to say here that the dates you see before you, they are estimates, okay? You have to think about the overlapping due to retrogrades. So look up the specifics for yourself if you're interested. And also, I do understand that we are all living different lives, okay, different ages, different experiences, etc. All right, Capricorn. Since 2011, Neptune has been transiting your 3rd house. So, what does this indicate? Well, what we have noticed for you, especially, would be major shifts to do with the way you think, how your mind works, how your mind operates, how you process information. One way to look at this actually is some form of confusion and deception tied to the mind. We can look at this as you making up all kinds of stories and scenarios within your mind. Of course, these false stories, stories that you may tell yourself or about other people. But we can also look at this possibly as some form of projection, maybe people projecting their own views and opinions onto you. But equally, this stuff could be it could be coming from you. And we also see here dissolving, right? Dissolving patterns, dissolving habits tied to siblings, tied to cousins, aunts, uncles, classmates, peers, childhood friends, things like that. So, what could this indicate? I mean, a possible way to look at this could be some distancing from siblings or feeling invisible among siblings. Or this could be siblings with addiction habits, addictive tendencies, which are very challenging for them. But this could also be related to you feeling a bit lost when it comes to trying to communicate with others, especially with siblings, with cousins, and so on. Could even be this sort of disillusionment and deception tied to your local area. Maybe you've been, and I'm going to say this, in some way, feeling the pressure, feeling a bit like, when is when are things going to change for me, and why am I finding it so difficult to see things clearly? Maybe especially because with you, Capricorn, it is about being able to be somewhat realistic and practical. But then again, this could also be about compassion, right? This could be you working on your inner voice, so to speak, or what it is that you tell yourself, being compassionate, being kind to yourself. We also see this as you exploring your gifts tied to spirituality, tied to your intuition, really allowing those things to guide you and lead you in many ways. We could also look at this as you perhaps being quite a caring and compassionate person towards others. For example, taking somebody else in, helping the vulnerable, helping people who they feel lost, they feel stuck themselves, they feel hopeless themselves. And what a really beautiful transit for creativity, to truly tap into your imagination and to dream, to visualize, to fantasize, perhaps also romanticizing certain conversations as well. But hey, you know what? Maybe you've really been especially into poetry, writing, painting, dancing, movies, just getting lost in movies, lost in art. And we could also, of course, look at this as you being interested in symbolism, spiritual practices, drawing from your hidden talents and gifts, especially mentally. And maybe too, a lot of healing within the mind, healing tied to communication. Perhaps also trying to express healing words in a way towards others, to speak in compassionate ways towards others, being mindful of expressing and showing kindness and patience and gentleness. Though what I will say, and I'm especially going to bring it up for you, Capricorn, because Saturn is your ruler, but Saturn has been transiting your third house since March of 2023 as well. And in actuality, this then suggests more of a defining, right? Defining words, defining what is in the mind, making what is mental a reality, trying to pull from your imagination, from your visions, and sort of bring them to life in a way. But we also see this as you setting boundaries, setting some kind of healthy boundaries within discussions and conversations, and trying to practice more being able to have more of a strong mind, to assess the mental load, how much you're carrying there, and how much you may be taking on, or how that can even be tied to some suffering and pain for yourself. But then again, hey, this could also be about you coming to terms with, okay, well, I got to take responsibility. I've got to just take responsibility when it comes to this local area situation, this neighborhood situation. So I think, especially because Saturn is your ruler, Saturn is trying to teach you about responsibility. Keep in mind, when it comes to this, you can either run from it, deny it, which, yes, consequences from that can happen, or you can lean into it. You can go, right, well, what can I actually do? What can I actually control? But yet, this is also in many ways, what Pisces is trying to teach you, is surrender. Surrender to the unknown. Okay, so now we have explored Neptune through your third. Let's go through these dates. April until June of 2011, Jupiter was in your fourth. So we can look at this, Capricorn, as significant shifts and changes happening within the home. Maybe a part of you wanted to get away from the home, you wanted to escape the home, you wanted to get away from your family. It was more about independence, freedom, and just putting yourself first, perhaps in many respects, family wise. Then June 2011 until 2012, Jupiter was in your fifth. I think that was a really lovely combination in terms of your creativity. right? Neptune in the third, Jupiter in the fifth. Beautiful for the arts, beautiful for creating, and for really indulging in your hobbies, thinking about your creative projects there, the things that bring you joy and happiness, perhaps more relaxation, greater relaxation in your life. Hey, maybe it's that there were new opportunities regarding these things back then, or some kind of new opportunities to do with romance and love and commitment there, taking things slow. June 2012 until 2013, Jupiter then was in your sixth. Okay, this is where we see you perhaps entering into the workforce or changing jobs or upskilling in some way, shape, or form, being open to learning, maybe new opportunities tied to educating yourself for work roles, work purposes. Also, we can look at this as you being quite multifaceted when it came to learning about health, maybe considering also greater opportunities tied to coworker relationships, connections, networking. Naturally, with the square between Neptune and Jupiter, there could have been some issues or challenges tied to siblings, tied to coworkers. Maybe something about commuting to work, getting to work, being sick, your health could have taken a hit. June 2013 until July 2014, Jupiter was in your seventh. So, this part of the transit, yeah, I mean, this could have certainly suggested an engagement, a marriage, connecting with another, committing to another for family reasons, family purposes, or maybe this was more so about a lot of stuff happening within your family, maybe between your parents, just between family members. And perhaps a part of you, there was a part of you that tried to communicate what it was that you needed, but perhaps there was a lack of support in some way, shape, or form. And I'm just saying that because with the seventh house activation, it does oppose you, right? That Cancerian influence does oppose you. So there was some kind of challenge regarding your very identity back then. And again, so much about home and family and hey, your emotional needs. July 2014 until August 2015, Jupiter was in your eighth. Now, this part of the transit, I really think suggested a heaviness, this heart, this heart factor, perhaps being heartbroken, perhaps having your trust disrespected, or we could look at this as you diving into your inner child, trying to explore, okay, well, what is it that brings me joy? What is it that lights me up? What do I actually love to do? And transformations could have occurred then as well. But then again, this could have also manifested as some kind of loss or distancing, a disconnect, maybe to do with neighbors, to do with childhood friends, to do with siblings. August 2015 until September 2016, Jupiter was in your ninth. So we could look at this possibly as you, Capricorn, taking on a new higher educational program, maybe going to university, going to college, or leaving university, leaving college. Or we could look at this as you entering into a different field, a different working area. Maybe advanced training was a part of it, and you were willing to learn. But perhaps at the same time, because so much was going on within your local area, within sibling relationships, or within you mentally, maybe there was some confusion or there was resistance, right? Because Neptune was opposing Jupiter at the time. Okay, so September 2016 until October 2017, Jupiter was then in your 10th. Well, this part of the transit could have indicated you entering into a significant role, making a significant change professionally, or it was about something to do with your parents. Maybe it was about being an authority in some way, shape, or form, or maybe it was about your parents' views and them passing on their interests or their feedback to you. Maybe there was also something about having to weigh out your options with relation to your career path. Could have been some indecision, honestly, but hey, it still could have been where new opportunities occurred professionally for you around that time. your public image as well was impacted. October 2017 until November 2018, Jupiter was then in your 11th. So with this part, hey, you know what? This could have been where you joined some sort of group that was about healing, that was about exploring the subconscious. Maybe it was really about psychology. You might have really been interested in psychological themes, amongst others. Maybe trying to understand why people do the things they do. Or maybe it's that you connected with different friends or you lost friends as well. There was some sort of renewal and transformation to do with friendships and communities and groups back then. November 2018 until December 2019, Jupiter was in your 12th. Right. This part of the transit, I think, perhaps indicates the greatest challenge. Well, one of the biggest challenges throughout your journey here. So Jupiter in the 12th could have indicated addictive tendencies coming up to the surface, could have indicated recovery, rehab, mental health difficulties, seeking help for your mental health, or seeing how you might have been getting in your own way, thinking about taking things over or going overboard, basically, being excessive, looking at coping mechanisms, coping strategies, escapism, how you might run away from things that are too overwhelming, too difficult, especially mentally, communicatively, with the square between Neptune and Jupiter. Then December 2019 until 2020, what do we see? Jupiter enters your sign, Capricorn. So with Jupiter in your first house, this then indicated some sort of new outlook, a change, a new chapter to do with your life path, your aims, your goals, maybe wanting to start over, maybe wanting to rebuild your life. Maybe this was even about marriage and families and children and taking on more responsibilities. But hey, for other Capricorns, maybe it was the sort of opposite of that in a way, where you left such situations behind or you had to really think about what you needed. But whatever the case may be, there was a new chapter, there was a new cycle ushered in, tied to what? Very much you, your individuality. Moving on, December 2020 until 2021, we have Jupiter in Aquarius in your second. Right, so there are some overlaps here, of course, but let's just focus on Jupiter in the second. This part of the transit could have indicated perhaps innovation tied to your resources, your finances, maybe exploring new ideas, fresh ideas, perhaps seeing what you wanted to change then and how you wanted to make a difference within the world, using your skills as a way to make a difference, as a way to help people. And then we go to April of 2022. And so Jupiter is then in the third, and Jupiter makes a conjunction with Neptune in your third house, ushering in a new 12-year cycle in Pisces. So, what did this usher in for you? I think it indicated some kind of new chapter, a new cycle tied to your intuition, tied to your communication, tied to your speech, your learning. Maybe a part of this cycle for you is really trying to understand yourself on a more deeper level, trying to assess your hidden self, your blind spots, anything that you're deceiving yourself about. And a lot of that then has been a process, and it will continue to be a process, a lot of healing and just a lot of going into important information there. But then again, hey, this could also be some sort of study tied to spirituality, as I was saying previously. Maybe a new beginning, a new cycle to do with study, research, your writing, your creativity there. Fast forward then to December 2022 until May of 2023. Boom, Jupiter goes into the fourth for you. And so what we can look at this as is you perhaps setting new plans in place, new opportunities happening tied to family and home. This could be, for example, a new family member, This could be moving house. This could have been moving country, completely relocating there. This could have been you deciding that you wanted to set up your own business within your home, or you wanted to be self-employed. But there was some form of leadership, right? Taking the lead in some way, shape, or form within the home. You maybe being a bit of a leader within your family, within your home, but basing that leadership upon the very lessons that came up whilst the Jupiter Neptune conjunction happened April 2022. So, for instance, those spiritual insights that really poured through for you and your intuition was just screaming at you, like, oh, right, okay, this is the path. Then it's sort of leading from that place, being guided from that place. Then, May 2023 until 2024, Jupiter back into Taurus in the 5th house. So we could possibly look at this as you really starting to slowly and steadily commit yourself to your creativity, to be quite determined, and to also showcase greater patience when it came to your creativity. Maybe also this was about literally having a child, or this was about, okay, how can I provide for my children? How can I support my children? Or how can I even draw from my creative gifts as a way to provide for myself? How can I earn money from my creative gifts? Then we arrive to today. And Jupiter is in Gemini again, and it's in your 6th. So again, we go back to upskilling, we go back to being quite multifaceted when it comes to work, when it comes to your schedules, your routines, maybe trying to juggle things about a little bit so that things work a bit more effectively for you. Even just assessing your productivity levels, what works well, what doesn't work well. And the other thing about this, of course, is Saturn itself, right? Again, your ruler. Saturn is in the 3rd, and it's been making this square to Jupiter in your 6th. And maybe it is about certain cutbacks too. This has been about cutbacks. This has been about, right, something needs to give. Something needs to give. I'm not doing all of this juggling. I'm not spinning all these plates and going overboard for very little in return. Let me just re-strategize. Let me just replan things. And that's been great for you. But things will start to ease. And you may find that the new foundations that you set in place when it comes to these very areas, they could be stronger for you moving forward. And then we arrive to Jupiter re-entering your 7th from June of 2025. Now, what I put there, it's more taking into consideration Neptune in Pisces mixed in with Jupiter. But basically, ending this transit, right? Ending the Neptune and Pisces transit in your 3rd, Jupiter would be in your 7th. Right. This could be quite rewarding, quite pleasing for you when it comes to clients, customers, collaborations, thinking about the kinds of people you want to work with, especially more on a one-to-one level. This could also be about significant changes to do with your relationships and your marriage, your spouse. Family themes are going to come up here. How you get from A to B is a big part of this. Commuting is a big part of this. But indeed, we could see up ahead perhaps more of this harmonious energy flow when it comes to communication and your local area versus your one-to-one relationships and business partnerships. Thank you so much, Capricorn. And now on to Aquarius. All right, Aquarius, let's talk about this Neptune and Pisces transit for you. And before we go any further, I just want to mention that the dates you see before you are more estimates, and it is important to consider retrogrades. Just remember that. If you want to just look into the specifics, look it up for yourself. Plus, I do also understand that we are all on very different paths when it comes to these transits, different ages, experiences, and so on. But I still hope that this video is helpful, of course. Okay. Since 2011, Neptune has been transiting your 2nd house, Aquarius. So what can this indicate? One thing could be you practicing skills and gifts to do with, could be spirituality themes, could be your intuition. This could also be about fantasy. and film, media, creativity, art, painting, writing, dance, poetry. Yeah, perhaps you have been very creative under this transit, so to speak, where you've just been enjoying the process. And maybe even a part of it too is when we think about how the second house is about comfort, maybe it's your creativity, it's spirituality that has been providing a lot of comfort for you. Perhaps also we can look at this as you seeking greater solitude or just sort of valuing greater solitude in your life, greater times for relaxation, the ability to recharge when you need to, and to flow with that a little bit, valuing the flow more than anything. Now, with that being said, we also notice some kind of challenging things here too, right? Because what we can look at this as is some disillusionment or deception tied to money, tied to your resources and your physical security. There could be here, Aquarius, this unknown aspect, this unknown element to these areas where you're sort of like, where do I go from here? What do I want when it comes to my physical security? Why is it so challenging for me to make money? Whenever I have money, I just lose it straight away. Why is everything so confusing here? We could also even look at this as the part of this where people almost expect, it's like people expect your charity, they expect your goodwill, and that within itself is just sort of like, oh my gosh, okay, well, maybe I need to take a step back here a little bit and think about how I am sort of using my energy. Who am I giving my energy to in this regard? Who am I being empathetic towards? Who am I being compassionate towards, but to an extent that it's really not healthy for me. And the thing about this, and I was talking to Capricorn about this too, is that your ruler, well, one of your rulers, Aquarius, Saturn, has been in your second house since March of 2023. So I think healthy boundaries have been coming up for you, but also really reevaluating the money situation, your money situation. We have seen blockages, we've seen trials and tribulations and the delays and the setbacks tied to money here for you. And I'm sure that has been really annoying, but also it's been an opportunity for you to go within and to spend some time reflecting upon, right, okay, well, what is not working here? What is going on here? How am I overdoing it? Who am I giving my energy to? What is my vision? What is my vision? What is my dream when it comes to money and resources? Getting very clear about those things perhaps, but also seeing what healthy limitations you can put in place for yourself, what healthy boundaries you can put in place for yourself so that you're not overextending so much. And I also think that there's some work that's being put in. There's some effort. It's like, right, okay, it's time to focus. It's time to be disciplined, to take this financial stuff a bit more seriously, to consider your skills and your gifts and being mature about those things, being somewhat wise about those things. Now, another way to look at Neptune in the second house as well, well, it could also be about your your talents and your skills being somehow tied in with your very visions, with the fantasy stuff. And that's something I did touch on, of course, at the beginning. But it could also be equally then about making money from those things, right? Making money from these skills of yours. And let's also even think about self-worth. Okay, so the second house is tied to our self-worth. So maybe we could explore this as you being perhaps a bit unsure about self-worth. And what I mean by this is a lot of projections happening, possibly, or you finding it difficult to sort of say, actually, no, this is who I am. This is what I'm about. This is what I want to say. These are my values. This is my self-worth. I'm sort of getting from this a little bit of people just projecting their own insecurities onto you because they're uncomfortable and you just taking it. Like, oh, yeah. But then I also think that with Saturn, and again, I think Saturn in a way then has been a bit of a blessing in disguise because Saturn has been moving through the second house and it's gradually trying to teach you, actually, hold on, are you seeing that? Are you seeing those projections? Are you going to see through those distortions? No, actually, you are worthy. Know your worth. I think Saturn in your second is massively about you knowing your worth, especially when it comes to your identity, because Saturn is one of your rulers. Rules you, Aquarius. Right. So now we have explored Neptune through the second. Let's go through these dates. April until June of 2011, Jupiter was in your third house in Aries. Right. So kickstarting this transit, I think what came through for you was, okay, I need to assert myself when it comes to communication, or feeling like you had to defend your position, or maybe getting yourself a bit riled up within conversations, especially amongst siblings. Maybe there was some rivalry that happened back then, or some competitive behaviors that happened back then amongst classmates, amongst your peers, or there was a part of it where you really were goal orientated about your studies back then. June 2011 until 2012, Jupiter was in the fourth, indicating some kind of growth and expansion tied to family and home, whether this be more family members joining the home or you moving home, so moving house, or this could have been your financial position changing in some way, shape, or form amongst your family, or it was that you had aims and aspirations tied to providing for yourself, trying to sort of support yourself, make money. June 2012 until 2013, Jupiter was in your fifth. Right, so this part of the transit could have been a bit more spontaneous, a bit more fun, a bit more lighthearted. Maybe you felt a bit more like flirty and you were curious about people, you wanted to date, you wanted to experiment somewhat. But then again, I also can't help but think because of the square to Neptune, there was something that came up about going against your own values, going against your own morals. That's what I'm getting from this. I even kind of think further about Neptune in the second and how that can also indicate surrender or sacrifice. To sacrifice your self-worth, to sacrifice yourself when it came to money and finances. People sort of even taking financially. But you also remember playing somewhat of a role in that and giving. Giving. Interesting. Okay, moving on. June 2013 until July 2014, Jupiter was in your sixth. And so we could look at this as you entering into the workforce or changing jobs, changing roles. We could look at this as you maybe especially working within the hospitality industry, the hotel industry. We could also look at this as just helping people, being of service to people. Maybe there were some significant financial shifts that occurred there, work shifts that occurred there, especially because of the trine between Neptune and Jupiter. July 2014 until August 2015. Well. This, to me, honestly, this is mind blowing because as I'm going through these, I'm reflecting a little bit on my own life because my sun is in Aquarius. But this is where we see with Jupiter in the seventh in Leo, possibilities of a breakup, breaking away from certain relationships, even feeling quite alone in some way, shape, or form, or having to put yourself first, having to consider your individuality. We could also look at this as challenges to do with self-expression, challenges to do with being seen, being recognized, especially romantically, especially when it came to committed relationships or friendships, more one-to-one friendships there. Even in a business setting, there was some challenge. This is what I'm getting from this. Challenges when it came to business collaborations and partnerships. Then we have here August 2015 until September 2016, Jupiter was in your eighth. That was flippin' massive for having to face your unconscious. but perhaps unknowingly so. Maybe a lot came up to the surface for you to do with picking yourself apart, overanalyzing, criticizing. Maybe a lot came up to the surface to do with improvement, right? Maybe you having to say, well, what is it that's going wrong in my life? Why is this same sort of pattern or cycle happening? And what can I do to change this? Keep in mind that Jupiter was also opposing Neptune, right? So Jupiter was in the eighth, Neptune was in the second. We see then the shifts, the major shifts in awareness, understanding yourself perhaps more psychologically speaking, but also equally feeling still like you were lost at sea, so to speak, when it came to your self-worth and your value. But of course, with Jupiter in the eighth, it's almost like you really started to analyze in a way to see, oh, right, what the heck is going on? Why are these things happening in my life? What choices am I making? Very good for just trying to grasp why you did the things you did back then. September 2016 until October 2017, Jupiter was in your ninth. Right. This part of the transit could have involved more travel, as an example. So you could have decided to travel abroad, or you decided to return home after traveling abroad. Just it involves some form of travel, but it also included more of this assessment of, okay, I want to know more about the world. Like I want to know more about different cultures and ways of life, and I want to further my studies. I want to further my understanding on things. Maybe a part of it was about philosophy or science, or just more so thinking about the abstract, art, beauty. Even law could have been a part of that transit for you. Legal matters could have really came up for you. Having to maybe pay back people or having to settle a few legal matters at the time. October 2017 until November 2018, Jupiter was in your 10th. Right. That was when you perhaps really started to refocus, re strategize. That was perhaps when you decided to take a different approach, or you decided to focus and be determined about your career, about your purpose, about your life's work. Investigation was a part of that. Opening yourself up to new opportunities with relation to investigation and hidden truths, hidden subjects. Okay, November. Oh, and also, of course, transformations and renewals tied to your very position there, your public position, your persona too. November 2018 until December 2019. Right, here we see, very, very interesting indeed to consider this. Here we see you taking a whole new approach, maybe looking at the bigger picture, exploring the bigger picture with relation to friendships, communities, teams, groups. Where is your place within society? All of these big questions came up, I think. Your very meaning within these areas. And again, travel could have been a part of it. Opening yourself up to new friendships or relationships or groups and communities back then, being quite inspired and enthusiastic about things. Then December 2019 until 2020, Jupiter was in your 12th. Okay, very, very interesting to me when I reflect on this for myself, because it was around that time that I started psychotherapy. What is this all about? And keep in mind, Pluto was in Capricorn at the time. I haven't really touched on other planets in the other signs at the time. But yeah, I mean, Pluto was in Capricorn for many years there. How does this apply? How does this apply to you, Aquarius? That part of the transit could have invited greater insight into, oh my gosh, these are my blockages. These are my limitations. These are my weaknesses. This is how I'm getting in my own way. And also having to just face the reality of situations, having to face the hardships, the grief, the loss, the pain, digging deeper into the hidden self, into your unconscious, assessing your own sort of blockages and limitations, which could have also let's keep in mind, could have also played a role when it came to the financial stuff, the self-worth stuff. Okay, let's keep moving on. December 2020 until 2021, what do we see here? Jupiter in your sign, Aquarius. Now, there's some overlaps there, of course, but I just want to say that whilst Jupiter was in your sign, Aquarius, around that time period, we saw a new cycle begin. For example, this could be a new start, a new chapter tied to innovation, tied to changing something about your experience, how you view the world, how you approach new situations. Community was a part of it. Being a part of something bigger than yourself was involved. And just to reflect briefly, just quickly here, it was around that time that I started creating transit videos back then, horoscope videos on the channel. So I really decided to push myself outside of my comfort zone when it came to astrology. So maybe for you, Aquarius, you can relate in some way, shape, or form, such as pushing yourself outside of your comfort zone when it came to, could be astrology, could be some other practice, it could be a higher educational program, it could be advanced training involved here, could be new aims and goals, just fresh ideas, difference, innovation. Right, then what do we have? We have April of 2022 ushering in a new 12-year cycle in your second house. Jupiter and Neptune conjunct in the second house there. Well, what did that indicate for you? A whole new cycle about finances, about self-worth, about your skills and your talents. And maybe so much came up to the surface. A lot of sort of spiritual insight came up, or how you might have been deceiving yourself, or how you can draw from your gifts, how you can even visualize things in a new way, dreaming up things in a new way, being inspired by the change, by a new approach. So again, all of this stuff very much tied to your finances and your physical security. Could have been a different job, a different role, a different direction related to those areas. Then December 2022 until May of 2023, what do we have? Jupiter back into the third in Aries. So a whole new perspective about education, about your studies, about speech, language, communication, listening, bravery tied to communication, confidence tied to communication. But doing so based on the sort of, could have been spiritual insights or what felt like a spiritual awakening related to finances, related to your self-worth, holding your head higher, so to speak, when it came to communication. May of 2023 until 2024, Jupiter was then back into the fourth house for you in Taurus. So we could look at this as some significant shifts and changes, expansion, opportunities to do with family and home and feeling comfortable, feeling at ease perhaps within the home or within yourself on an emotional level. Naturally, let's also keep in mind that Uranus has been in Taurus too, and there was the Jupiter-Uranus conjunction that happens. And so that conjunction, it could have shifted something within you, tied to inspiration, tied to knowledge. Maybe you really wanted to take your knowledge to the next level, but more so within the home. Or it's that you had many ideas and aspirations, and you still do, tied to family and home and your living situation there. We arrive to today, right? And Jupiter is in Gemini. It's in the fifth house once again. And so you've been so creative with Jupiter being in Gemini the past number of months. It's been almost a year, right? So yeah, you've really been very creative. Well, it actually hasn't been almost a year, but anyway, I'll try and not get too caught up in details there. But you've been considering, right, well, what do I enjoy learning about? What do I enjoy researching? How can I change things up? And that's been quite exciting. But of course, with the square between Saturn in your second and Jupiter in your fifth, we have still seen financial blockages, creativity blockages. Maybe what's important to keep in mind here is that, yes, the square is not going to be forever. Things are going to start to turn and ease and move throughout the year. And so what's going to be left behind, hopefully, is like a lot of creative projects and ideas that you have to act on, but it's being able to manage those things in an effective way where you can actually earn money from them. That's just one way to look at it. Of course, this could also be about romantic relationships. So, thinking about possible financial struggles romantically. This could also be financial limitations tied to children, trying to provide for yourself. But again, things are going to move. There's still some new exciting opportunities there and expansion there to do with romance and love, engagements, celebrations, fun and play, children, all the rest of it, Aquarius, dating, etc. Then finally, Jupiter will re enter your sixth. And Jupiter will actually enter, and of course, we'll be there for you. But the dates that you see there, it's more so just taking into consideration Neptune in Pisces and then Jupiter, okay? But what does this suggest? It suggests that closing the Neptune and Pisces transit, Jupiter in your sixth house will invite new opportunities, perhaps luck, expansion, and growth to do with work, to do with feeling safe and secure, right? It's that security focus tied to Cancer. And because of that, oh my goodness, we could see beautiful energy flow, more money, greater prosperity there tied to your security. Very interesting indeed. Perhaps you're going to feel, it's like you're going to feel more safe and settled, Aquarius. Thank you so much, Aquarius. And now on to Pisces. Okay, Pisces. Last but certainly not least, and I do feel the need to say something quite important to you, Pisces. And well, Neptune has been in your sign, right? In your sign, in your first house, so much about you, so much about your identity, your life path, new aims, new goals, new chapters. Pretty massive, honestly. And I'm also going to say that, well, I mean, not everybody gets this opportunity, right? Not everybody, not every sign in the zodiac. And so not everybody gets an opportunity to experience Neptune up close and personal. Right. First of all, I want to say the dates you see before you, Pisces, are more overlaps. So if you want to really get into the specifics, look up the dates. Just remember retrogrades and things like that. And then also, I do understand that we're all at different stages of our lives as I go through these. So since 2011, Neptune has been hanging out in your sign. What has happened? Oh my goodness. Well, you have, I think, in many ways, really embraced the mysteries of life. You have, I think, really came into your own. And I'm saying this, I mean, yes, okay, Neptune can be about dissolving and disillusionment and things, but because Neptune is home in your sign, I just feel like you have flourished in many ways, actually. You have outgrown previous versions of yourself. You have addressed your ego or lack of ego. You have been trying to delve into the past, into ancient wisdom, ancient knowledge, ancient truth. You are a sign about hidden knowledge. You remind us to really look deeper, to look much deeper into things. And so that within itself has been quite a journey for you. Of course, Pisces, I mean, we also notice possible themes to do with, right, okay, addictive tendencies, having to address your own disillusionments or how you might have how you might deceive yourself, really having to address what's real in your life, looking at victim mentality as well in some way, shape, or form. All of this sort of savior complex stuff to do with your sign, feeling like you need to save other people, rescue other people. And then still, it's the whole question of what is real, what's not real. And sure, we could also look at this as you really surrendering in many ways and opening yourself up to this ancient wisdom, ancient knowledge. and becoming so enlightened in many ways too, right? With all of the spiritual awakening stuff to do with you and Neptune. But again, I think at the same time, you've been having to address any sort of false behaviors, things that actually don't belong to you, right? Having maybe emotional clear outs, having to reset, having to remove yourself from really unhealthy people, or having to go through unhealthy cycles and getting yourself to a point where you feel just more calm, serene. Okay, the whole bliss nirvana stuff to do with your sign, but also compassion, self forgiveness. If it is, for instance, that you have gotten involved in pretty shady business, and perhaps for many of you, by no fault, sorry, for many of you, it hasn't been your fault why you've been involved in those things, right? But if this is the case, maybe you've been on this journey where you're trying to come to terms with, well, why did I let that happen, or why did I let that into my life? And then if it is that something more sinister occurred, like, abuse and things like that, hopefully you've been recovering. Hopefully, especially with Saturn in your first house since March of 2023, you've been putting healthy boundaries in place. You've been, I think, showing greater responsibility for your life and just going, you know what? I'm sick of that old way of doing things. I want to change something about my life. I want to be committed here. I want to dedicate myself here. So, for instance, right, this could be for some of you, yeah, the addictive tendencies, right? So, we'll say an example, alcoholism. If it is that you're a Pisces and you know in your heart of hearts you struggle with alcohol, maybe over the past couple of years you've said, "Hey, enough of this. I am taking responsibility for my life. I'm not doing this." Or, for instance, we can look at this as if you're a Pisces and maybe there's some addictive tendencies to do with food or overconsumption or excess, things like that. Again, Saturn, boom, past couple of years, not today. I'm not doing that anymore. So, if anything, I think a big part of the past few years, especially, has been massive for you health wise, body wise, appearance wise. But it's also that tenderness and that kindness and that support that you give yourself. Maybe again, that could be, for example, distancing yourself from unhealthy people who are just, honestly, they're not good for you. They're bad news, Pisces, to not be so easily influenced by other people. And then I'm also getting from this just the part of this where perhaps you've been growing in your wisdom, your knowledge, your truth, and maybe too, being able to, in a way, be flexible, be fluid, be curious, be open to change. So we see the embracing of different aims and goals and being more spiritually aligned with those things. Perhaps even spiritual practices have been huge for you over these past number of years, Pisces. But anyway, now that we have explored this influence for you and just all of the identity shifts, for example, hey, you know what? Maybe that's another thing. The whole projection stuff tied to your sign. Maybe you've been taking back your own projections, but you've been able to see through other people's projections and their own distortions. You've also been able to come out of a bit of a fog, if you will, especially again because of Saturn over the past couple of years. Taking accountability, taking responsibility for your life. Is that easy though? Has that been easy though? Perhaps not. Perhaps not. I mean, trying to start a new habit that you haven't done before or trying to stick to a certain plan. And I know for you, it can be challenging to stick to plans. I know. But trying to do that, it requires a lot of discipline. And I do think Saturn in some respects has been supporting you. Could also be about your own healing journey. Okay, let's now go through these dates. April until June of 2011, Jupiter was in your second house, Pisces. So, kickstarting this transit of Neptune in your first actually what we saw was possible new opportunities to do with your finances, maybe taking on a new leadership position or having new goals in mind to do with your finances and your resources back then. We could also look at this as some kind of shift within you to do with your self-worth, being quite passionate even there in some way, shape, or form about, okay, these are my financial goals, these are my security goals, goals tied to your skills, your talents. Then June 2011 until 2012, Jupiter was in your third. So this part of the transit could have invited perhaps greater expansion and opportunity tied to study, research, education. Maybe you decided that you wanted to earn money from your writing or from something that you've been learning or researching, or just, yes, a certain subject that you perhaps were quite committed to at the time. You were quite steadfast about it. Or we could look at this as some kind of new opportunity or growth tied to communication. Then June of 2012 until 2013, Jupiter was in your fourth. So we could look at this part of the transit as indicating travel, right? So perhaps this was you traveling to a different country, relocating. Could be that you moved to a different country for educational purposes. Could have been a certain educational program abroad, going to university abroad, for example. Or it could be that there was some fluctuation, some changes, or going between homes, houses. Your living situation changed. There was some scattered energy there. There was greater flexibility there. June 2013 until July 2014, Jupiter was in your fifth. So what we see here is you perhaps feeling a bit more emotionally connected within love and romance, or it's that you really sought after that bond, that emotional bond with a certain lover. And it was about trying to establish this emotional connection, this emotional attachment. Maybe it was back then for some of you Pisces, you literally had a child, you were raising a family, or it's that some of you, creativity wise, there was some sort of art form that really moved you. Then we fast forward to July of 2014 until August of 2015, and then Jupiter is in the sixth. So we can look at this as your work involving travel, or we can look at this as new opportunities tied to work, tied to your services. Maybe wanting to integrate something a bit more creative and fun into your everyday. Or we can look at this as you gaining new opportunities or seeking new opportunities tied to coworker relationships. But then I'm also thinking to myself, possible challenges being present here. I think that there could have been some challenges about, could have been your work, could have been your skills, refining your skills. Maybe recognition was a part of it, feeling seen was a part of it, but then more so you not feeling seen so much. Okay, August 2015 until September 2016. Right, this is an interesting one because Jupiter was in the seventh in Virgo opposite this Neptune influence. This is so fascinating. I think that that part of the transit invited a significant change to do with your relationships. Whether this be you were in a relationship that actually wasn't the most healthiest for you, and then it was a change, like a switch. You decided, no, I don't want to be in this anymore because you were a bit more practical about it all. You could see things differently. Or it could be that you entered into a new relationship with this newfound sort of perspective. But we also see this manifest through business partnerships, business relationships as well. But whatever the case may be, we see some kind of change, growth, expansion to do with relationships and one-to-one connections. Maybe it's also that you had plans to maybe marry or propose to someone or to get engaged. September 2016 until October 2017, Jupiter was in the eighth. Okay, so this part, this is an interesting one because I actually think that this could have brought up a lot of stuff to do with the surface, brought up a lot of stuff to the surface. So an example of this I'm going to say is if it was that you were in a previous relationship and then you got into a new relationship, maybe it's that you kind of brought your own unconscious baggage into the next relationship, or it's that there was some sort of confusion or deception about, oh, is this stable? Is this steady? Because my previous relationship, it was really rocky for me. But then again, this could also be where you were seeking to strive for greater balance and harmony when it came to intimacy and trust and commitment. Maybe we could look at this as you seeking to really connect on an intimate level with a partner, with a significant other. But then again, hey, it could also be where this stuff involved joint financial planning, combining resources, or paying off some sort of debts. Maybe justice was a part of it too. October 2017 until November 2018, Jupiter was in the ninth. We could look at this as you literally, again, just more travel being a part of this, I think. Literally traveling abroad, moving abroad, could have been you combining resources with your significant other so you could both move abroad together. You could move back home, for example, as another possibility there. Or we could look at this as you going into some sort of higher educational program or taking on a new course that involved greater research, investigation, hidden stuff could have been a big part of it. Maybe also this was about your own teachings, lecturing, how you broadcasted, how you published back then. But again, it's sort of like you really wanted to understand things on a more deeper level back then. And so there were new opportunities about those areas. November 2018 until December 2019, Jupiter was in your 10th. Okay. So this part, I think we could see the expansion, the growth, the new opportunities, perhaps luck here to do with your career path, being open to the new, open to new experiences, travel being a part of your career path, or it's knowledge and higher education and teaching and everything else. But hey, here's the thing. I also want to mention that keep in mind, Jupiter, in a similar fashion to Sagittarius, Jupiter is your ruler. So as we're going through these dates and everything, just remember that this stuff is so much about you, so much about your aims, your goals, your identity. And then I'm also thinking to myself, is it that at some point you went through a bit of a divorce or a bit of, it goes back to an ugly breakup, an ugly separation. But anyway, again, we get back to the 10th. And so I do think it's sort of like saying a new vision, a new meaning, establishing a new meaning, broadening your horizons in some way, shape, or form to do with purpose, a change of direction, a change of view. December 2019 until 2020, Jupiter is in the 11th. So you perhaps taking some time to really focus on the very quality of your friendships, of group involvements, group participations, how it was back then that you wanted to build with others, how you wanted to network. Maybe network was a big focus. It was a primary focus for you back then. Or it's that a big primary focus for you back then was tied to your future aims and goals and your dreams and everything, and really just gradually, slowly building toward those things, making them a reality. December 2020 until 2021, Jupiter, boom, is in the 12th for you. Now, there's some overlaps here I just want to say, but with Jupiter in Aquarius in your 12th around that time period, Pisces, what a magnificent time for a lot of inner work. Self-reflection was massive, trying to maybe address your quirks, what makes you different, your uniqueness, addressing the hidden self, your hidden gifts, your hidden talents, things like that. Your self-undoing could have been a big thing that you addressed, maybe tied to difference. But whatever the case may be, amazing for self-exploration, amazing for self-reflection, and just taking that time for extra study, maybe behind the scenes, maybe studying with like minds, studying within a community, taking the feedback you receive from your community on board, and really feeling into, right, okay, does this relate to me? Does this connect with me? Then we go to April of 2022. And Jupiter is there with Neptune. So the Jupiter-Neptune conjunction happened April of 2022, ushering in a new 12-year cycle in your sign. So very much a whole new cycle, a whole new chapter to do with you, your very identity. We can look at this as marriage, children, a house, relocating, a new study, moving abroad, anything just about identity. We can look at this even as a divorce, a separation, whatever it may be. But yes, all of these new starts, major shifts happening for you, Pisces. And maybe a big part of it was about your independence, your individuality, having a bit of a spiritual awakening or a wake up call about the next chapter for you, spiritual insights, spiritual downloads. Then we fast forward to December of 2022 until May of 2023. Boom, Jupiter is back in the second in Aries. So when we go back around here, what we see is you at that time setting new intentions or feeling this call to go after new goals to do with your finances and your security based on the very spiritual realizations and discoveries that came up April of 2022. Leadership, courage, bravery, Pisces. I'm also getting from this, and it's interesting, I haven't included the planets and the other signs and everything, but what's coming through here is with Chiron. Remember, Chiron was also in Aries at the time. So maybe a big part of that was it was like a major breakthrough or a major addressing your wound, sort of addressing your wound tied to leadership, tied to your very beliefs, what you believe to be true about yourself in terms of finances and earning, etc. May 2023 until 2024, Jupiter is back in Taurus in your third. So we could look at this as a different approach, especially because Uranus was in Taurus at the time, or still is in Taurus, but with the Jupiter-Uranus conjunction, innovation and change and inspiration to do with communication. And maybe you deciding, you know what, I want to take things a bit more slower. I want to really just take my time when I learn this. I want to innovate a little bit when it comes to my education and how I speak, how I communicate. What are my unique gifts when it comes to communication, when it comes to what I'm studying? And how can I even earn money from my studies in some way, shape, or form? May of 2024 until March of 2025, and we arrive to Jupiter in your fourth house today. Jupiter is back in Gemini in your fourth. And so once again, we are noticing then this opportunity for growth and expansion to do with family and home. Maybe you have noticed that your family has expanded in some way, or it's that your house is expanding in some way, right? If you think about adding things to your house, or it's that you need more space because you're filling up your house more. We also see this as you studying within the home. We see this as a lot of conversation, a lot of chatting happening amongst family members, and great variety. Great variety. At the same time, yes, Saturn is in your first, and there's a bit of a square between the fourth and the first. So maybe there's still some pressure that's being felt right now, right? You're feeling the responsibility, you're feeling the heaviness, perhaps this load. Could even feel slight burdensome, but this load about, oh, these are my responsibilities and these are my duties. Honestly, the thing about this, Pisces, is yes, I'm saying that Saturn can be really beneficial for you in terms of discipline and commitment, but Saturn can also be quite a challenging spot. It can be a challenging planet in a way for you because it's like, no, but I want to just flow with things. I don't want to have to take all of this on, but you're sort of reminded of your responsibility. This stuff is karmic as well. Still, things will start to move, things will start to ease, right? Because the square is going to ease a little bit. And you may find that with Jupiter in your fourth, you're going to be left with this growth to do with family and to do with perhaps feeling a bit more lighthearted, a bit more easy breezy family wise. Okay, then we arrive at Jupiter re-entering your fifth in Cancer, June of 2025. Now, the dates that you see there's a bit of an overlap, and I'm just taking into consideration Neptune in your sign mixed with Jupiter. But basically, as we close Neptune in your sign Pisces. Jupiter in your fifth in Cancer does indicate, hey, it could indicate having another child, having your first child. It could indicate a new creative project. It could indicate some sort of growth and expansion to do with romance and love, engagement, celebrations, marriage. It could also indicate you feeling emotionally connected, emotionally supported by your romantic partner. Or we could look at this as you spending more time with loved ones, spending more time with family, maybe just wanting to have more fun, experiencing more free time. Thank you so much, Pisces. And with that, this has been the Neptune and Pisces story for signs Libra through to Pisces. Thank you so much for watching, everyone. And let me just see here. If you would like to book a reading with me, you can visit my website, hannahselsewhere.com. If you enjoyed your horoscopes, if you benefited, then please, there is a link there. If you would like, it's up to you. You can always buy me a coffee. No pressure, of course. But overall, just thank you so much for listening. Thank you for being here. And again, for Aries through to Virgo, I will put the link below. Hey, take some time to reflect, folks, on the past 14 years. What a time it has been. All right, with that being said, then, I will catch you in the next video.